Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirya Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 3, the birth of Lord Krishna, text 32 onwards. So Mother Devaki prayed to Krishna in the previous verses, and now Krishna will speak. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Tvam eva purva sargaya bhu prishni swayam bhuve sati tadayam sutapa nama prajapatir akalmasha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead replied, My dear mother, best of the chaste, in your previous birth, in the Swayambhuva millennium, you were known as Prishni, and Vasudeva, who was the most pious Prajapati, was named Sutapa. The Supreme Personality of Godhead made it clear that Devaki had not become his mother only now. Rather, she had been his mother previously also. Krishna is eternal, and his selection of a father and mother from among his devotees take place eternally. Previously also Devaki had been the Lord's mother and Vasudeva the Lord's father, and they were named Prishni and Sutapa. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, he accepts his eternal father and mother, and they accept Krishna as their son. This pastime takes place eternally and is therefore called Nitya Leela. Thus there was no cause for surprise or ridicule. So Krishna now is telling that in Swayambhuva millennium, Swayambhuva Manvantara, now this is happening in Vivasvat millennium, towards the end of Dwapara Yuga, 7th Manu's 28th Dwapara Yuga. But in the first Manu's time period, Prishni and Sutapa, they performed austerities. So, as confirmed by Krishna by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. One should try to understand the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from Vedic authorities, not from imagination. One who follows his imaginations about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is condemned. So that's why we have to learn it properly. The Lord appears as a son of his devotee by his param bhava. The word bhava refers to the stage of pure love, which has nothing to do with material transactions. And also, from here also it is confirmed Krishna's appearance is transcendental, because how many babies we have seen, they come out of the mother's womb and mother is praying to him, father is praying to him, and then he starts telling, oh, millions and millions of years ago you did austerities and you were Prishni and Vasudeva, Prishni and Sutapa. Who can tell the parents' background history right away? If only God can. Text 33. Yuvame brahmanadishto praja sarge yada tapa sanniyamendriya gramam tepate paramam tapa. When both of you were ordered by Lord Brahma to create progeny, you first underwent severe austerities by controlling your senses. So since he was Prajapati, Sutapa, so he was ordered by Lord Brahma to create progeny. But what did they do? They first wanted to control or purify their senses by performing austerities so that they can have the right progeny. So here is an instruction about how to use one's senses to create progeny. According to Vedic principles, before creating progeny, one must fully control the senses. This control takes place through the Garbhadan Sanskar. In India, there is a great agitation for birth control in various mechanical ways. Not only in India, it's all over the world. But birth cannot be mechanically controlled. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. birth, death, old age, and disease are certainly the primary distresses of the material world. People are trying to control birth, but they're not able to control death. And if one cannot control death, one cannot control birth either. In other words, artificially controlling birth is not any more feasible than artificially controlling death. So, despite all the schemes or all the efforts by the government or the people themselves by using contraceptives or this or that, abortions, that we don't want baby, still the birth is taking place. People are getting born and human population is increasing. Also, animals, they want to kill, so many animals get killed, but so many animals are being born. So you cannot control birth. There's a right way, actually, right progeny to happen, not just any children to happen. According to Vedic civilization, procreation should not be contrary to religious principles, and then the birth rate will be controlled. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi. Sex not contrary to religious principles is a representation of the Supreme Lord. People should be educated in how to give birth to good children through sanskaras, beginning with the Garbhadhan sanskar. Birth should not be controlled by artificial means, for this will lead to a civilization of animals. If one follows religious principles, he automatically practices birth control. Because if one is spiritually educated, he knows that the after effects of sex are various types of misery. One who is spiritually advanced does not indulge in uncontrolled sex. Therefore, instead of being forced to refrain from sex or refrain from giving birth to many children, people should be spiritually educated. And then birth control will automatically follow. So that's the right way of birth control. In fact, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, although he was a Nastic brahmachari, and he had taken sannyas also later on, but he said, if I could produce Krishna conscious children, I'm ready to have hundreds of Krishna children. Point is, of course, he was so powerful, he could have produced Krishna conscious children. But the point he was making is the Grihastha should be careful that we want to have Krishna conscious children. And then they can have as many number of children as they want. And as what they can afford also. If one is determined to make spiritual advancement, he will not beget a child unless able to make the child a devotee. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Pita na sasyat. One should not become a father unless one is able to protect his child from mrityu, the path of birth and death. But where is their education about this? A responsible father never begets children like cats and dogs. Instead of being encouraged to adopt artificial means of birth control, people should be educated in Krishna consciousness, because only then will they understand their responsibility to their children. If one can beget children who will be devotees and be taught to turn aside from the path of birth and death, there is no need of birth control. Rather, one should be encouraged to beget children. Artificial means of birth control have no value. Whether one begets children or not, a population of men who are like cats and dogs will never make human society happy. It is therefore necessary for people to be educated spiritually, so that instead of begetting children like cats and dogs, they will undergo austerities to produce devotees. This will make their lives successful. And actually, this is what is happening. People are begetting children like cats and dogs. That's how. Why cats and dogs? Because they themselves don't have any spiritual values, and what are they going to give their children? What kind of values they're going to give their children? Nothing. Eat, drink, and be merry, that's all. वर्षवाता तपहिम धर्म काल गुणाननु सहमानो श्वास रोध विनिर्धूत मनोमनु शीर्ण पर्णानि लालाहाराव उपशांतेन चेतसा मत्तः कामानभीप्सन्तो मदारा धनम ihatu. My dear father and mother, you endured rain, wind, strong sun, scorching heat, and severe cold, suffering all sorts of inconvenience according to different seasons. By practicing pranayama to control the air within the body through yoga and by eating only air and dry leaves fallen from the trees, you cleansed from your minds all dirty things. In this way, desiring a benediction from me, you worship me with peaceful minds. Vasudeva and Devaki did not obtain the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his son very easily, nor does the Supreme Godhead accept merely anyone as his father and mother. Here we can see how Vasudeva and Devaki obtained Krishna as eternal son. In our own lives, we are meant to follow the principles indicated herewith for getting good children. Of course, it's not possible for everyone to get Krishna as a son, but at least one can get very good sons and daughters for the benefit of human society. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that if human beings do not follow the spiritual way of life, there will be an increase of Varnashankar population begotten like cats and dogs, and the entire world will become like hell. Not practicing Krishna consciousness, but simply encouraging artificial means to check the population will be futile. The population will increase and it will consist of Varnashankar, unwanted progeny. It is better to teach people how to beget children, not like hogs and dogs, but in controlled life. So having children is not a problem. One should have spiritual children. So for that, one has to prepare. I mean, the husband and wife, they should prepare themselves by proper austerities. Human life is meant not for becoming a hog or dog, but for tapodivyam, transcendental austerity. That's what Maharaj Rishabdev taught his sons. Tapodivyam putraka yena sattvam. Everyone should be taught to undergo austerity, tapasya. Although it may not be possible to undergo tapasya like that of Prishni and Sutapa, the Shastra has given an opportunity for a method of tapasya very easy to follow, very easy to perform, the Sankirtan movement. One cannot expect to undergo tapasya to get Krishna as one's child. Yet simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one can become so pure that one becomes free from all the contamination of this material world and goes back home, back to Godhead. The Krishna consciousness movement, therefore, is teaching people not to adopt artificial means of happiness, but to take the real path of happiness as prescribed in the Shastra, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, and become perfect in every aspect of material existence. So by chanting, this is the austerity, this is our bhakti, this is everything for us, chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So by chanting it regularly and increasing our chanting with more love and devotion, more attention, this will purify us. Mahaprabhu himself said, Cheto Darpan Marjanam will happen only by this chanting. And then, if we are chanting and then we get married, we have children, then the children will definitely be devotees of the Lord. And they will be the ones, of course, Krishna can engage us also, and Krishna can engage those children also in the service of, in his service to preach, to give the message to others, not just having kids like cats and dogs. Evam va tapyato astivram tapah param dushkaram divya varsha sahasrani dvadasheyur madatmano. Thus you spend 12,000 celestial years performing difficult activities of tapasya in consciousness of me, Krishna consciousness. 12,000 years. Of course, they appeared in Satyuga, so out of 100,000 years of life, They did the tapasya for 12,000 years. Tadavam paritushtoham mamuna vapushanake tapsa shraddhaya nityam bhaktya cha hridi bhavita pradurasam varadrada yuvyo kam aditsaya vriyatam vara iti uppe madrisho vambrita sutta. O sinless Mother Devaki, after the expiry of 12,000 celestial years in which you constantly contemplated me within the core of your heart with great faith, devotion, and austerity, I was very much satisfied with you. Since I am the best of all bestowers of benediction, I appeared in this same form as Krishna to ask you to take from me the benediction you desired. You then expressed your desire to have a son exactly like me. So this was the desire of Krishna. She wanted to have a son exactly like Krishna. 12,000 years on the celestial planets is not a very long time for those who live in the upper planetary system, although it may be very long for those who live on this planet. Suttapa was the son of Brahma, and as we have already understood from Bhagavad Gita, one day of Brahma equals many millions of years, according to our calculation. We should be careful to understand that to get Krishna as one's son, one must undergo such great austerities. If we want to get the Supreme Personality of Godhead to become one of us in this material world, this requires great penance. But if we want to go back to Krishna, we need only understand him and love him. Through love only, we can very easily go back home, back to Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore declared, Prema Pumartha Maha. Love of Godhead is the highest achievement for anyone. So this is the real way, actually. Instead of trying to bring Krishna here, why don't we go there? And it's easier to go back home, back to Godhead. And the Prabhupada says, as we have explained in worship of the Lord, there are three stages, Jnana, Jnanamaya, and Rati, or love. Suttapa and his wife Prishni inaugurated their devotional activities on the basis of full knowledge. Gradually, they developed love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when this love was mature, the Lord appeared as Vishnu. Although Devaki then requested him to assume the form of Krishna. To love the Supreme Personality of Godhead more, we want a form of the Lord like Krishna or Ram. We can engage in loving transactions with Krishna especially. See, one cannot love Brahmjyoti, Nirakar. There is no way. There is no reciprocation of any kind of feelings or emotions or activities with Nirakar. So one can only have this loving, real loving relationship with the form person. And a person like Krishna or Ram. And then Prabhupada said we can engage in loving transactions with Krishna especially. Because with Ram, again, there is some mood of awe and reverence. But with Krishna, there is no awe and reverence. Ram's friends, like he called Sugriv his friend. But Sugriv cannot have that kind of relation with Lord Ram as Krishna's cowherd boyfriends can have with Krishna. They would even jump on Krishna. Sugriv cannot jump on Ram. So there is this mood of awe and reverence with Lord Ram, but not with Krishna. Even with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu did not have those intimate relationships. He was a sannyasi. He was here to preach. Krishna was here to perform his pastimes. He only preached the message of Bhagavad Gita. That's it. He did not preach otherwise. So that's why Krishna is different. Of course, Mahaprabhu is also different in the sense Mahaprabhu is very, very merciful, very beneficent. Krishna did not give that kind of Krishna prem that Mahaprabhu gave. But the relationship of Krishna with his with his associates, with his devotees is completely different. Mahaprabhu also displayed those relationships earlier when he was a child, when he was a boy, little boy, as a Nimai, but not later on. Because he came in a different mood, actually. That was also the reason. In this age, we are all fallen, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead has appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to bestow upon us love of Godhead directly. This was appreciated by the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Rupa Goswami said, Namo Mahavadanyaya. In this verse, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is described as Mahavadanya, the most munificent of charitable persons, because he gives Krishna so easily that one can attain Krishna simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. We should therefore take advantage of the benediction given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we are cleansed of all dirty things. Cheto Darpana Marjana. And then we shall be able to understand very easily that Krishna is the only object of love. Therefore, one need not undergo severe penances for many thousands of years. One need only learn how to love Krishna and be always engaged in his service. Then one can very easily go back to God. Instead of bringing the Lord here for some material purpose, to have a son or whatever else, if we go back to Godhead, our real relationship with the Lord is revealed, and we eternally engage in our eternal relationship. By chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we gradually develop our eternal relationship with the spiritual Supreme Person, and thus attain the perfection called Sarup Siddhi. We should take advantage of this benediction and go back to Godhead. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has therefore sung Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avatar. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared as an incarnation to deliver all fallen souls like us and directly bestow upon us love of Godhead. We must take advantage of this great benediction of the great personality of Godhead and just take up the process very, very seriously. Ajushta grama vishya anpatyocha dampati navavratya pavargamme mohito deva mayaya. Being husband and wife, but always sonless, you were attracted by sexual desires by the influence of Deva Maya. Transcendental love, you wanted to have me as your son. Therefore, you never desired to be liberated from this material world. So even that did not cross your mind. Vasudeva and Devaki had been Dampati, husband and wife, since the time of Sutapa and Prishni. And they wanted to remain husband and wife in order to have the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their son. This attachment came about by the influence of Deva Maya. Loving Krishna as one's son is a Vedic principle. Vasudeva and Devaki never desired anything but to have the Lord as their son. Yet for this purpose, they apparently wanted to live like ordinary grahasthas for sexual indulgence. Although this was a transaction of spiritual potency, the desires appear like attachment for sex in conjugal life. If one wants to return home back to Godhead, one must give up such desires. This is all possible only when one develops intense love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, Nishkinchanasya bhajanon mukhasya param param jigimchor bhavasagarasya. If one wants to go back to Godhead, one must be nishkinchan, free from all material desires. Therefore, instead of desiring to have the Lord come here, become one's son, one should desire to become free from all material desires and go back to Godhead. Prabhupada again and again says the same thing. Of course, we cannot do the austerities like Prishni and Sutapa did, but our austerity, as Prabhupada mentioned, just chant. As Mahaprabhu teaches in Shikshashtakam, na dhanam na janam na sudhi. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service in my life, birth after birth. So one should not ask the Lord to fulfill any materially tainted desires. So although Sutapa and Prishni, they were pure, they did so many austerities, but because they had just one desire to have Krishna as their son. And they didn't even desire to be liberated from this material. They were quite eligible to get liberated, but they didn't desire that. And to have Krishna as a son, they didn't mind going through this relationship, conjugal relationship with each other, husband and wife. They said, we'll remain as husband and wife, but we just want you as our son. That's really strong desire. They were determined. This is what we want. Gate mai yuvam labva varam mat sadrisham sutam gramyan bhogan bhujyatham yuvam prapta manoratho. After you receive that benediction and I disappear, you engage yourself in sex to have a son like me, and I fulfilled your desire. According to the Sanskrit dictionary Amar Kosha, sex life is also called Grame Dharma, material desire. But in spiritual life like this, Grame Dharma, the material desire for sex, is not very much appreciated. If one has a tinge of attachment, so material enjoyment of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, one is not Nishkinchana. But one really should be Nishkinchana. Therefore, one should be free from the desire to beget a child like Krishna by sexual enjoyment. This is indirectly hinted at in this verse. But then again, we have to understand that we don't become free of material desires by just artificially saying, I have no desires left. You become free of material desires by getting attached to Krishna, to serving Krishna, to Krishna Katha. When we have those spiritual desires, when we have the attachment, the love for those spiritual desires, spiritual practices to serving Krishna, Krishna's devotees, automatically, slowly, all these material desires go away. And that's a real process. But otherwise, desires, they can come back anytime to haunt us, to tease us, to bother us. So that's why the real process is to take shelter of Krishna and only desire to serve him. And slowly, material desires will go away, new material desires will not be formed, and whatever is there in the heart, even if it comes forth, the desires, many desires will come forth in our consciousness, but will not even try to indulge in those. So then the real cleansing takes place. Okay, so we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, so you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.